And welcome back to the Upside Sports Network. My name is Michael. Huge news, Shohei Ohtani to the Dodgers, 10 years, 700. That's right, $700 million for Shohei Ohtani to go to the LA Dodgers. Welcome in. Make sure you guys hit that subscribe and like on the video. Hit that subscribe on the channel as well. Follow us on X at UpsideSN. But wow. We've been waiting for this news for what seems like forever. A lot of rumors swirling around over the last week or so. Some misinformation that was put out there yesterday. Tracked down all of that, of course. JP Morosi, Fox Sports anyway, apologizing for that later on, saying he got incorrect information and apologized for his part in it. But right now, the story is all about what the LA Dodgers ultimately did here. There's going to be some deferred money. There's a lot of rumors as to what the contract ultimately will look like as far as that deferred money, seeing all kinds of speculation as to what it might be. I've yet to see anything definitive, but it's said to be prolific, the amount of money that they're deferring off into future years. But $700 million. Let me repeat it again. $700 million. I get he's a two-way player. I get he's a once-in-a-generational player. And we talked about how he's worth basically $75 million to whatever team ultimately signs him. So I guess in that respect, it makes sense for the Dodgers to get it done. But Ohtani wants to win championships. That's part of why he deferred some of the money here. But $700 million, the market supposedly was around 550, according to what a lot of the national reporters were getting their information from. Obviously, they were way off the mark here, and he gets a full $150 million more than what the rest of the industry was at least negotiating with Ohtani at. You saw some of the rival executives say that, hey, $700 million? We weren't even over 6. There were some teams that weren't over 5 that were in the market for Shohei. So, wow. Just the lengths the LA Dodgers ultimately went to get the deal done. Absolutely great job to be able to bring him in, get the deal actually signed, all those kinds of things. That's all well and good, but wow, $700 million. He's a two-way player, so let's kind of break that down first. What are you getting for that $700 million? Obviously, one of the game's top 5 hitters, arguably one of the top 2 hitters in the entire game. Him and Aaron Judge probably in that conversation for 1 and 2. Yordan Alvarez could be in that conversation as the 3, 4, 5, along with Corey Seager, etc., etc. But wow, what a job Dodgers do bringing him in. On the pitching side, what exactly are you getting there? You're getting a guy who can be a number 1 in a rotation, in a playoff rotation, a Dodgers team that does need some starting pitching for the future. However, big caveat here, he just had Tommy John. He's going to be out for the next season as far as a pitcher. There's some speculation he could return sometime around August, September as maybe a late inning reliever. Maybe he starts for you once every 2 weeks at the end of the season. Getting into the postseason is not going to be an issue for the Dodgers, I don't think. So maybe getting him for a postseason run would be great as far as a pitcher, but I'm expecting him to pitch in 2025, not in 2024. I think anything you get out of him on that side of the ball is absolutely gravy. But when you look at it, you think of the top players in the game as to what they might be making on the open market. Players like Corey Seager, who just signed that 10-year, $325 million deal. His AAV is only $32.5 million. They're roughly paying him $35 million to be an offensive player, and another $35 million per season to be one of the best pitchers in the game. In case you guys are wondering what Jacob deGrom just got with the Texas Rangers, that everybody said, that's absolutely ludicrous for a player of his caliber. I understand when he's on, but he has injury issues. Obviously, you saw the injury issues bite for deGrom. Ohtani's already going to be out for the first year of that contract. He's going to be, his second Tommy John now, I believe, already. Same thing as what deGrom is going into. And, wow, just look at the numbers. Look at the numbers they're throwing around for Ohtani and the similarities, at least as far as pitching is concerned, for deGrom. deGrom got, $37.5 million per season, roughly, over the course of that contract. Meanwhile, Shohei Ohtani is getting roughly $35 million just to be a pitcher every single season. You add them up together, that's $70 million. And here's the even bigger kicker, the biggest risk for the Dodgers. If he goes down, say, he tweaks a hamstring, he pulls, a muscle in his arm, he can't swing the bat right, he can't throw. He's not just one aircraft carrier out of your lineup, he's two. And now you're going to have to work twice as hard to replace both of those pieces if he misses time. But if he's healthy, when he's healthy, he is certainly one of the best, 2 or 3 best players in the entire game. I would argue because he does both things on both sides of the ball, he is the best player in the game right now when healthy. But he's not going to pitch next season, and there's no guarantee that he pitches over the entirety of that contract. I'd be shocked if he actually pitches all the way into those later years of that deal. But what a job for the LA Dodgers to get this one done. Reminds me a lot of what the George Steinbrenner Yankees did back in the 90s, really buying every single major free agent out there. And Dodgers really needed this one. They were trying to trim their payroll last year, reset their luxury tax clock, and they did it. They got it done, but it cost them a run at a World Series this past season. They did it in the name of winning the bidding for Shohei Ohtani. And if he really was that interested in going after, the possibility of playing with the Blue Jays or the Braves or any of the other teams that might have still been in there at the very end, if he was seriously considering those spots, the high tax rates in California, you got to take those into account. Geography played a little bit of a role. He posted on Instagram anyway, if you want to see his explanation and his apology, honestly, to the baseball media for taking as long as he did with his decision and how he handled it overall. I think he's experiencing some regrets as far as how he handles it, or at least how he handled it anyway. But I think his statement was very carefully crafted to at least let those people who had issues with the way he handled his free agency, might be able to, say this is his mea culpa, and now he's ready to move forward, because he won't be a free agent again until he's, into his 40s at this point. So, great deal for the Dodgers. They get their guy. Sorry about the Toronto Blue Jays. I know you guys are really down in there all the way to the very end. Mark, welcome in, Sarah. Ohtani certainly did get the bag, and no, the Jays were not going to match that for $950 million roughly, and what the equivalency would be in Canadian dollars. But, wow. Just when you consider all the factors going into Shohei just going to the Dodgers, staying in LA, playing with the Angels last year, staying in LA, going to the Dodgers this next season, the Angels are already tearing down the banners for Shohei. I think they already had that one in the works, honestly. I think if he was going to a different team out of LA, I think they'd probably wait a day or two to leave up the mural that's out there in front of Angels Stadium anyway. But ultimately, it's a crosstown rival. There's no reason to say, hey, he did us any favors by going somewhere else and playing in another market. No, he's going to be our direct competition in our own city, in our own market, to compete for our fans. How many of our Angels fans are now going to become instant Dodgers fans because of this? And how are we going to sell tickets after this? Sure, we have Mike Trout, but we don't have a farm system. We don't have the players to compete. It's going to be a tough sledding for the next several years for the Angels. I love the hire of Ron Washington. I think he'll get that thing turned around eventually. My question will be, will he be able to be the guy that's still there once he does get that thing turned around in the next 2 or 3 years, once he develops some of that talent? So I don't think he'll get the opportunity to do so. I think he only signed a 2-year deal. I think Manassian's going to be out sometime in the next year as far as GM of the LA Angels. I think the writing was on the wall already, and I'd be shocked if he ever gets another GM job. Absolutely organizational mismanagement, the way he handled that, and he may have been told to do that by his owner. And if that's the case, he needs to make that very clear publicly once he gets canned after this. But I expect Manassian to be gone here in the next few months. we'll see what else happens. But Shohei going to the Dodgers certainly changes things in the NL West, solidifies the Dodgers there at the top of that division for the foreseeable future. As plucky as the Arizona Diamondbacks were, as good as that young team looks, we're talking about Betts, we're talking about Freeman, we're talking about Ohtani, we're talking about Smith, whatever starting pitchers they're going to acquire, the money they're going to spend, it's going to be biblical right now as far as what else they decide to do. I think part of the reason why Ohtani went there is because they're willing to spend the money, and because he deferred some of that contract, I think they're going to spend big this offseason. I know everybody's speculating that Yamamoto's likely to go to the Giants, the Mets, or the Yankees. I would have to say the Dodgers right now, based on the way they spent the money going after Shohei, it'd be negligent for them to at least not consider the possibility of Yamamoto. I think they were in there before this anyway, but I think the impetus now to sign Yamamoto is even higher than before they brought in Shohei, or before Shohei's free agency was resolved. He's going to be over stateside this Monday, and he'll take meetings with teams in SoCal. Maybe being in SoCal, being around his countrymen, in Southern California, might convince him to stay in Southern California, and there's a few teams out there looking for his services, so we'll see what happens with Yamamoto this coming week. But as far as the rest of this goes, what happens with the rest of the teams that were in there for Shohei, make sure you guys hit that 100, hit that star as well, or hit the heart in the chat. Really helps us out. Got about 15, 20 of you guys with us now. Okay. But as far as what does the rest of this do for him, that'll be item number one after the Shohei news overarching here. Item number one, what happens with the Toronto Blue Jays? You look in the division, they already have Juan Soto now brought in by the New York Yankees. They're supposedly hot on the tail of Yamamoto as well. If the Yankees get Yamamoto and Soto, that's an A-plus off-season for them. If they don't get Yamamoto, they still need some starting pitching in New York. Other teams in that division, you have the Tampa Bay Rays. They're going to be without McClanahan this season. They're going to be without Franco for at least a few months. It sounds like they might even lose him for his career. But the Rays are still a high-quality team. They're not going anywhere. Then you look at the other team who just won that division and was the favorite to win the World Series out of the American League at the end of the regular season. That was the Baltimore Orioles. They just added to their bullpen, and I'm expecting them to add not one but two starters at the front of that rotation. I'm expecting somebody like a Dylan Cease. Eduardo Rodriguez was a guy I thought would be a great fit for the Orioles. Ultimately, he did not go there, chose to go to the Arizona Diamondbacks instead on that 4-year, $80 million deal with an option for one more year after that. But as far as what do the Jays do after this, all those teams in the division are still going to be right in front of them. I think they still need to add a third baseman. Maybe there's a reunion with Chapman there. They could circle around to Cody Bellinger, play a corner outfield, center field position, maybe play first base once they decide to move on from Vlad Guerrero. Soler could be a DH option. Belt had a good year for them last year. He's a free agent right now. Joey Votto's been mentioned a few times in connection with the Jays. There's a lot of avenues the Jays could go down. Maybe they revisit, the trade market, go after a Randy Rosarena, maybe a reunion with Teoscar Hernandez. There's a lot of options now on the table for the Jays. None of them are at the level of Shohei Ohtani, and I think Ohtani would have been the piece that would have pushed them above all of the teams in their division, might have made them World Series favorites anyway out of the American League, but ultimately they fall a little bit short. $700 million ain't nothing. So that's quite a price tag, and I'm not surprised the Jays didn't win the bidding if it got up that high. But when you look at what the Jays' next steps are any of these moves going to equal what the Yankees have already done this offseason, or are they going to still be just a little bit short? And if the Yankees still add some starting pitching, I would argue the Yankees have leapfrogged them in that division at this point. I think their best chance to win was over the last couple of years, and ultimately they just couldn't get it done. That rotation looks like it's pretty much set for the next season. But I'm not necessarily sold on it being a long-term solution anyway in that starting staff. They have some question marks long-term with Bo Bichette and with Vlad Guerrero Jr. Bo Bichette, I think, is the future of that team. I don't think he's going anywhere. I think the Jays will do anything they have to keep him. But I think the price of poker for the rest of the free agents on the market and the rest of free agents going forward, not just this year but next year, just went up. You talk about a $700 million player. That's roughly $70 million per season. Position player wise, that basically means the market's around $35 million for a player of Shohei's caliber. That's also an upgrade over what players have been signing for in recent history. You look at the Xander Bogaerts deal, the Corey Seager deal. None of those deals equal what Shohei's getting just for the position player aspect that he brings to the LA Dodgers. So the free agent contracts are going to go up. They were going to go up anyway year to year, but I think they just took a nice spike because of that contract Shohei just signed. Welcome in Isaiah. Welcome in Mike. Dodgers will get Yamamoto or Cease. I'm not sold on Cease. I still think they're going to be right in there, but I think Baltimore ultimately gets that one done. I wouldn't be surprised if the Dodgers ultimately try to get a 2-for-1 type trade by going to the Milwaukee Brewers. I think Corbin Burnes would fit them exactly what they need, and they'd be able to fill their shortstop hole as well. So as far as your comment there, Cease or Yamamoto, I would lean more towards Burnes being the more likely out of those, but I think Yamamoto probably brings the biggest impact, both short and long term, because he could be a number one. And he's not going to cost them any prospects, whereas Burnes and Adames, if they make the trade with the Brewers, is going to cost them Gavin Lux, some of their young starting pitching that they've already developed. Mike, watch how quick Harper and others want to renegotiate their contracts with Ohtani's big contract. If they have opt-outs in their deal, I'm sure they'd love to opt out and try to sign for a longer term or a bigger dollars or something like that. But I don't think it's going to cause any renegotiation or anything like that. That's not really too much of a problem in the big leagues. Every now and again, you see a team say, "Hey, you've been a good player for us. We'll go ahead and give you a little extra." I remember they did that with Buster Posey, if I remember a few years back. In basketball, you think of what Steph Curry was making. 4 years, $40 million is what he had signed a contract extension for at one point, trying to save the team money. He had injury issues. Obviously, quickly became one of the best players in NBA history. And the Warriors decided to go ahead and make good for him and pay him more than they really had to. Teams don't necessarily have to renegotiate contracts. You signed on the dotted line. You decided to play for that team. While you may request a trade or you may want more money, you signed that deal. You said, I will play here under these conditions for this amount of money for this amount of time. So contracts are contracts. You can't just willy-nilly renegotiate them. But I do think players who have opt-outs might be willing to exercise them a little bit more easily at this point because of the money that was thrown around in that deal for Ohtani. There is plenty of money in the sport of baseball, and it is not going away anytime soon. And I expect that money to get even better as some of the TV networks that are struggling to pay their bills for the contracts they had negotiated might end up losing those contracts, and then those rights fees can be sold at an even higher rate elsewhere. Or the whole format for regional sports networks might be redone in an entirely different way that causes the teams to make even more money than that. I think this is just the beginning of the next few years of the sports business model as far as regional sports networks go, but I don't want to bore you in the details of that one. But as far as the contracts being able to renegotiate, if they have opt-outs, I think they will probably exercise them a little bit more frequently than we've seen in the past few years and might be willing to take or might end up signing for more money overall. But Ohtani, 10 years, $700 million. We talked a little bit about how this affects the Toronto Blue Jays. What about the other teams that were said to be in there for Ohtani? Talking about teams like the Giants, Rangers had bowed out earlier, talking about teams like the Cubs, talking about teams like the Boston Red Sox, teams that had bowed out a little bit earlier. For the Rangers, I don't think they were necessarily out on the market for Shohei in the beginning. I think money was a little bit of a concern early on in free agency. I think GM Chris Young basically put some cold water on that, saying they can go after whoever they want. Money's not that big of a concern. I'm sure they'd like more consistency with the money that they're going to be bringing in with their TV contract, but I don't think they're going to have any issues as far as being able to pay the contracts they already have on their books or being able to spend more money in free agency. I think it was just something they had to get their head around to begin with. Now that they've had some time to digest where their financial situation's at, I still think they're going to be in there for guys like Jordan Montgomery, Josh Hader, Jordan Hicks, Stevenson, the reliever from the Rays as well, some trade targets like Burnes and Glasnow. Those could be some of the options we could see going to Texas here in the next few weeks. But now that Ohtani's off the board, I expect free agency to certainly pick up. The market around Cody Bellinger, I'm expecting to pick up quite prolifically over the next day or two. So stay tuned there. Mariners are said to be interested. Cubs, Giants. Yankees were in at one point, but I think the acquisition of Soto, Verdugo, and Grisham pretty much ends that pursuit. Maybe the Blue Jays circle around to Shohei Ohtani after missing out, or circle around to Bellinger after missing out on Shohei Ohtani. But it's going to be a fascinating next 42, 72 hours anyway, as far as what happens with Yamamoto, once he starts taking meetings on Monday, and then what happens with the rest of the top end of that position player market in Bellinger. JD Martinez is now the next best DH to come off the board. Justin Turner is in that class along with Jorge Soler. We're going to see some quite a bit of activity between now and Christmas Eve. So make sure you stay tuned. Hit that subscribe button. We'll keep you guys updated if anything big happens. We'll try to go live as quickly as we possibly can if anything major happens that day, just like today. Second I got off of work, we're going live and talking about Shohei. So appreciate you guys joining us tonight. Welcome in Niner Gang and Jose. Matsui and Tanaka bring me Yamamoto. Okay. Jose, the free agency board is about to pick up finally. Couldn't agree with you more, Jose. I do believe this is the first of many dominoes to fall. There's so much starting pitching needy teams out there, and there's so much starting pitching still on the market. Very few position players, and I do think trades are certainly going to pick up. We did see a trade today, kind of another trade to move on another player that the Braves didn't want in the trade that they made yesterday to bring in Fletcher and Stassi. They sent out Evan White in that deal to the Angels. Today, they flipped Stassi on the way to the White Sox to clear off more payroll. So another trade for your Braves, Leslie. Braves will make a big splash trade or signing in the next 48 hours. I'm not sure about the next 48 hours. Could I see it? Absolutely. Maybe they go out there and go around to Glasnow and get that trade done, or maybe they sign Blake Snell. I think his market's certainly going to pick up, but I think that will probably wait until Yamamoto signs. I think some of the bigger starting pitchers could wait until Yamamoto goes down, and like I said yesterday, I'm expecting that one to happen probably Thursday, Friday, Saturday of this coming week. So we'll see what happens. The timeline for Yamamoto, if he's a little bit more public about it than Ohtani was, remains to be seen. Hopefully he's a little bit more public and lets the teams out that he's actually talking to, those kinds of things. That'd be great for us that are actually trying to follow his free agency and follow what's going on with all of our favorite teams. Would be something to certainly help the hot stove season. So Ohtani ends up with the Dodgers, 10 years, $700 million. You look at the way that lineup's going to look like. You got Betts at the top, along with Ohtani probably in that 2-hole, Freeman in that 3, Smith in that 4, and then you get any mix of players, Hayward, maybe if they bring in Adames, maybe he plugs in that 5-6 spot. Muncy's still around anyway. They got some, Chris Taylor, I believe, is still around as well. They have some money to spend. I believe they're going to go well above the luxury tax this year. They were around, $210 this past season? Somewhere in that range. I think they're going to obliterate that, and they're going to go well north of $300 million for payroll going into next season. They still have Clayton Kershaw that they could bring in as well. There's been some rumors connecting him with the Rangers. Once again, I'm still not buying them at this point. But, Leslie, your Braves are still better than the Dodgers. I think it's a lot closer, but I think once the offseason is over, I think the Dodgers are going to be the class of the NL. Just the starting pitchers that they're going to bring in. I think they're going to bring in at least one ace, probably 2. They're going to trade for another, and then they're probably going to have to trade a couple of those young starting pitchers that they've developed that I think could turn into aces at some point. Kershaw could be back around the All-Star break for them as well. I think by the end of free agency, by the end of the offseason, once we get to spring training, I'm expecting the Dodgers to be the heavy favorites on the NL side. I still think the Braves are going to add one starting pitcher to really ratchet things up, but I think it'll be still 1-2. Whereas last year it was Braves-Dodgers, I think this year it's going to be Dodgers-Braves at the top of the NL. So the American League just got a lot more interesting, though. Ohtani's no longer in the AL West. I think the AL West pretty much is solidified as the bottom 2 teams are going to be the A's and Angels for the next 3 or 4 years. Texas, Seattle, and Houston going to jockey for the number 1 spot there in the AL West for the next couple of years. The top of the AL East is still a 4-team race. I think the Red Sox are not one of those 4. The rest of them could be anybody's team anyway. By the end of the offseason, we'll see who gets their offseason checklist completed. If the Yankees get Yamamoto, then I think they're very likely the best team in that division. If the Orioles get Cease and add another starter as well, maybe they're at the top of the division. The Rays, I think, are going to miss some pieces out of that rotation, with Glasnow probably being traded, very likely being traded by Christmas Eve. We're talking about McClanahan missing the entirety of the season. I just don't think they're going to be able to win the division. Do I think they'll win a wild card spot? Absolutely. I think there's an outside chance we see a trade for Margot, and I think there's a very remote possibility we see a trade of Paredes or a Rosarania, but I would put those on the back burner, at least for right now. I think the market's going to kind of settle down the rest of the day and just kind of see how things go with that Shohei contract and kind of see where the teams kind of lie after that. I think we could see some very rushed and hurried activity on Monday. So keep your eyes peeled for our live that we're going to do Monday evening. But appreciate you guys joining us tonight. Make sure you guys hit that like and subscribe if you haven't already. Appreciate those hearts in the chat. Thank you for those. And if you're new here at the Upside, make sure you follow us over on X at UpsideSN as well. Only the two transactions of any real substance today, anyway, was the OHTANI signing to the Dodgers. He made his announcement on Instagram. But what a deal for Shohei. What a deal for the Dodgers. But they're going to have to justify that contract by spending more money. Evilzilla, Baltimore still better than the Yankees. I would agree with that for right now. But I think if the Yankees add Yamamoto, I think they leapfrog your Orioles. I think if they don't yet add Yamamoto, which I'm not expecting them to, then I think they're still a step short. I think they're going to be a day late and a dollar short when it comes to their starting pitching once again. I think injuries are injuries. Once you start getting injured, it just seems like injuries start to add up over the course of time. Rodon's had his injury issues. We saw a whole bunch of injuries on that Yankees team last year. Orioles were relatively healthy for the majority of the season. They missed Mullins for a period of time, though, and I still think they need to add starting pitching both in Baltimore and in New York. But as currently constructed, I would say Baltimore probably still finishes on top. Now I'm expecting the Yankees to probably finish in that 2 spot. The Blue Jays probably in that 3, and then the Rays probably right now, I would say they're probably in that 3 spot, but once they trade Glass now, they'll easily be in that 4th spot for me. But we'll see what happens. They are young. They had great years, though. I do expect Baltimore to get better. I do expect them to add some starting pitching, but they got to add the starter first. Once they add a starter, once the Orioles add a starter, or once they add a starter in New York, we could see something different in the AL East. But as of right now, I'd still say Baltimore is at least a little bit ahead there. You're a Mets fan. Okay. Well, I'd say you guys are still probably leaders in the clubhouse right now, along with the Giants for Yamamoto. Y'all need some starting pitching. I would expect them to add at least one frontline starter. I know they've talked about the possibility that Montgomery could be a fallback option for them if he doesn't get a deal done with the Rangers. The Atlanta Braves have been mentioned as a fallback possibility, along with the Giants for Montgomery as well. But Yamamoto is only going to go to one team. He can't play for both the Giants and the Mets, and the Yankees and whoever else whoever else is in the bidding. Only one team is going to have him next year. They're probably going to pay $300 million over the course of 10 years, roughly, to be able to bring him in. But we'll see who gets the deal done. But appreciate you guys joining us tonight. Wanted to make sure we hit on all the different Shohei Ohtani rumors out there. There's still some fallout happening as far as what the deferral is going to be. We'll update you guys on what that ultimately turns out to be as well. But what's the next step as far as position players, free agents? I think the next guy in line is Cody Bellinger. I think it'll probably take a couple of days at least for his market to really crystallize. Teams that missed out on Soto and Ohtani now probably circling around to Bellinger and seeing what they can do to improve their team. All of these teams promise their teams a big major impact into their lineup or into their rotation. And they're going to have to spend some money to be able to get it done. Some of those teams are going to wind up short, and then they're going to have to go to the trade market and see if they can get something done there. Yankees actually promised something, and they delivered it. Giants have promised it for years and have failed. They miss out on Ohtani and Soto so far. Not sure they were really in on Soto anyway, but now really it comes down to Yamamoto for the Giants, then Bellinger, then Snell. If they don't get any of those guys, could be another long winter for Giants fans. So hopefully you guys have a little bit better luck out there this year. Rizzo and Stanton are done. Stanton, I believe, is done. I think his best days are long since gone, but I still think he has a good enough bat to be in there as a DH, but he's not going to be able to play 162. Certainly can't play the field anymore. Rizzo, I don't think he's done. I think the concussion issues that he had last year really sapped his bat. He looked good in the first half last year, and I think he's going to be able to, if his concussion issues are subsided and he's fully healthy again, I think Rizzo's going to be right back to what he was before. Your gut tells me the Braves will get Montgomery. Braves could use an ace, but not needed. I think they need an ace, honestly, for Atlanta. Their rotation is not deep. They do not have the depth and young starting pitchers like they used to. When they first started this run with Ronald Acuna, they had 4, 5, 6 guys down in AAA that would probably be able to pitch at the major league level. Soroka at one point was the ace of that staff. Obviously, the injury issues honestly, the way the Braves absolutely misused him and ended up destroying his career cost him a lot of money. But hopefully he's able to, be a nice reclamation project for the White Sox, and he can get back something of what he lost. But the Braves absolutely destroyed his arm in that postseason series, and when you're a young player, you want to do everything you can for your team. But ultimately, I think it cost him several $1 million for Mike Soroka. But Braves, I think, do need an ace because they don't have that depth anymore. I think they have some great top-end talent in Fried, Strider, Elder's a decent piece for them as well. But I still think they need one more, ace-level pitcher, or at least a number 2 that can start in a playoff rotation. Really have, Fried, say they get Glasnow in there, and then Spencer Strider as their number 3 in a postseason series. That would give them a nice leg up on whoever they face in a postseason series. For instance, in the NL side, you'd probably be facing the Dodgers in the NLCS. You're probably starting OHTANI game 1 after this coming season. Fried won't be there, but I think for this coming season, right now you'd have to say they would have the best rotation because they're not going to have OHTANI in that rotation for the Dodgers at least this season. But we'll see what pieces they get if they bring in Snell, if they bring in Yamamoto, if they go after Burns, Glasnow, etc. I expect the Dodgers to be very much interested in adding at least a couple of starters out there. Braves will get Cease. Will the White Sox like trading with each other? They like trading with each other, sure, but the reason why the White Sox just pulled Cease off the market a couple of days ago is because they didn't like what they were being offered by teams out there. Now, the teams that are said to be in the market, the Orioles, the Dodgers, the Braves, the Cardinals as well. Giants were mentioned at one point. Not really sure how much, that one really had any legs to it at all. But, as far as the White Sox go, you want to get the best return you possibly can. The 2 best farm systems in the entire sport are interested in your player, that being the Orioles and the Dodgers. Where do the Braves rank? All the way down in the late 20s, might be one of the worst farm systems in the game right now. They do not have a deep system. As far as the prospects they would have to trade, they're not going to have the same quality the Orioles or the Dodgers are going to be able to put forth in a trade. So if they're willing to give up, say, 8, 9 players, sure, but they're not going to do that. They'd have to give somebody off of that major league roster, and they've already got those guys locked up to cost-controlled deals. So the top pieces, the top trade chips are on teams like the Orioles and Dodgers. My guess is they still go to the Dodgers, or to the Orioles anyway. But the Dodgers could just as easily wind up with Cease. As far as the Braves, I don't think they have the ammunition to be able to get it done. I think they'll ultimately go after a guy like Shane Bieber, somebody who's going to cost less on the market. And that's probably going to be the ace number 1, number 2 type starter. Maybe even a Glasnow because he's only got 1 year left on his deal. Burns because he's got 1 year left on his deal. Those types of pitchers are probably more realistic for them to get than a guy like Dylan Cease, who's going to cost a pretty penny out there. I just don't think they're going to have the prospects to be able to get it done. I think for the Braves, the best case scenario for them is to find their solution on the free agent market in Montgomery, Snell, whoever else they might have interest in, rather than the trade market, and hold on to the prospects that they do have left. But appreciate you guys joining us. Going to wrap it up here. Dodgers ultimately signed Shohei. They get it done. All the rumors, all the speculation that he was headed for Toronto ended up turning out to be false. He was actually in Southern California, ends up getting the language done that he wanted to get done with the Dodgers. 10 years, $700 million for him to go to the Dodgers and anchor that lineup for the next 10 years, anchor that starting rotation for the next 10 years. Is he going to be able to stay healthy? Is the deferral going to be enough for them to stay competitive and field a $300+ million roster every single time? White Sox make a deal acquiring Max Stassi from the Braves on a much lesser scale of a move than OHTANI, obviously. But appreciate you guys joining us again tonight. We will be live for you guys again on Monday night. Make sure you guys join us every single weekday as we break down all the latest rumors from the hot stove season, all the free agent rumors, the trade rumors out there, how they impact teams that are out there. And then as we get closer to spring training, we'll get into some predictions for 2024. But thank you guys. Had a great week covering the winter meetings with you guys, even though it was relatively uneventful except for the final 2-3 hours of that Wednesday at the winter meetings. Juan Soto ultimately dealt to the New York Yankees this week. Shohei Ohtani to the Dodgers this week. 2 deals we expected to get done before this offseason really began. But what a price tag for Shohei Ohtani. Nobody, and I don't think anybody really had this thing getting over $650 million, let alone $700 million. The deferral, I think, is really what made it possible for the Dodgers to get that number done. What a great deal for the agent Nez Bolello, and what a way for them to keep it all secret and all private and out of the public eye. That's for them to be commended. To be able to keep this type of a deal secret is absolutely fantastic for them and their agency. But as far as a baseball fan and a baseball industry perspective, I would love to have seen this process actually play out with reporters being involved, teams actually being able to talk about their pursuit of free agents. I know GMs, as a rule, generally don't like to talk about free agents, but generally teams at least put it out through the media. Hey, we talked to this guy, we met with this guy, we have a meeting with this person, we're not interested with that guy, we are interested in that guy. They never did that with Shohei, and we missed out on that as far as the excitement around Shohei. And hopefully the next big free agent, next year there's going to be multiple free agents out there that are going to have similar levels of hype. Ohtani was a character all into himself, though. Dominates the Japanese market, dominates the American market, and was looking to dominate the Canadian market as well. Ultimately decides to go to LA, 10 years, $700 million. So appreciate you guys joining us tonight. Again, make sure you guys join us Monday around 8:30, 9 o'clock, and we'll break down all the rest of the fallout from Ohtani's signing, and hopefully we'll have some updates on what Yamamoto's meetings look like in Southern California on Monday when he gets to the States. Appreciate you guys joining us. Make sure you guys hit that heart, like the video, hit that subscribe button, follow us on X, @UpsideSN. We'll see you guys Monday.